The starting point is that there is no one solution fits all. So regenerative farming, the principles are there, but the practical implications are different. I cannot see that regenerative farming, like you see in Cambodia that you just explained, will be implemented in another region, a very dry, arid climate like northern Nigeria. So there is a huge diversity of agroclimatic conditions, but also farms, farming systems, so different starting points. The first thing that you have to look at, what's the status of the soil, because that's also already quite different. It's not only about soil fertility, but it's the soil health, the soil quality. And are you already applying techniques? And yeah, the example of Cambodia already gives or shows that some techniques are already done, although we didn't realize it's regenerative agriculture. And also very important, are you willing to implement them? And do you see the benefits? And also, do you have a long-term vision? Because don't expect immediate, instant results the next day. So every farm or even a field on a farm is special. So even within a farm, maybe you have to think about differentiation and making tailored decisions on what to do. And what's also important is you need to be flexible and don't start with something and then keep on doing it because someone told you it should be done like this, but you also have to be able to monitor, evaluate, and adapt. So as some kind of examples, what can be done? Still with mechanization and increased biodiversity still, then it's the combination of agroforestry and wheat growth. Still, it's not applicable to all conditions. It depends on the mechanization rate, but also the climate. In the southern of France, this type of farming is possible because the climate is dry and not moist, while in the Netherlands, well, when we want to harvest our wheat, the autumn is already here with a lot of rain is possible and humid conditions. So the more shade you have, the less the wheat will dry up. So also that has an impact on what you can do. Planting strip of trees in the middle or even on the hedges of the field to increase biodiversity, while owning already the machinery, at least there are options. You can think about what do I have and how can I change. But also, like I already explained, that also in Lelystad we are looking at Wageningen University, we're looking at mechanization, and we are not cultivating 10 hectares as a monocrop anymore, but we split it up in what we call strips of 3 meters wide, and then with improved machinery we can still cultivate the same surface of crops, but not as a monocrop on one big plot, but more now divided in strips. And also drones, robots, apps, tools can help in still using a lot of mechanization, but on the other hand also increase biodiversity. And on a small scale, it can be adapted to the conditions of farmers also. But still, it requires time to adapt, especially with agroforestry. Trees need time to grow. For soil nutrients, if the soils are completely degraded, then we can ask ourselves the question, should we use chemical fertilizers, yes or no, or should we reduce it? Well, my opinion is we should increase it. Otherwise, you will never have the biomass that you require to improve the soils. And only the use of organic manure will not be sufficient, because I don't think there's sufficient amounts of manure that can supply the needed nutrients. or the biomass to improve the organic matter content in the soil. So we need to boost agricultural productivity and at the same time also boost production of biomass to regenerate soil life and quality of the soil. But then still, if we use chemical fertilizer, it should be done accordingly to the 4R principles: the right time, right place, right type. And I forgot the fourth one, but no doubt you all know them. Lisette knows the fourth one, but the microphone is off.
Yeah. Right amount. I think it's the right amount.
Yes. Engagement in regenerative agriculture, because it's not only about the easy low picking of the low fruits, but also you need really to be convinced. You really need to be willing to rethink the current system and think out of the box. But there are controversies. Well, in a way, I still think many of the regenerative agriculture practices are associated to good agriculture practices. So if that's a starting point, I think we are already on the right track. And also really think about what's the balance between practices. At one hand, it will offer more carbon dioxide sequestration, the reduced tillage, but on the other hand, the less tillage you do, the less weed control is done. So more weed emergence can take place, and then more herbicides are needed. And herbicides is something we want to avoid because it's a chemical input. So hand weeding should be promoted, but if labor is an issue in shortage, then it will create also a problem, and we have to think about mechanization. So new techniques for weeding are then needed. So changing one aspect can lead to maybe two other aspects that you have to tackle. Excluding external inputs, only adding biomass to the soil, as explained before, is not sufficient to build up soil organic matter. You also need nutrients to convert the biomass into soil organic matter. So still, I think external inputs are needed for a start, and maybe in the future, once it's built up and once it's stable and stabilized, less dependence on fertilizers are needed. But I think at the start, maybe more fertilizers should be promoted rather than less. And also the more manure you use, well, in Europe also farmers have limitations in using manure because it also has negative impacts on climate change, because it emits methane, but also nitrate gas, greenhouse gases, meaning it has a negative impact rather than a positive impact that we can achieve with soil carbon sequestration. And also for rethinking the system, and also for the farmers, it requires a lot of knowledge, and also monitoring and planning. It requires a lot of skills. And also, I started also by saying regenerative farming has really been developed and thought about in Western world, while if I look at developed versus developing countries, I think the developing countries are further developed in regenerative farming than what we call developed countries. If you see the small strips, the small plots surrounded by bushes, shrubs, trees, well, I think they are closer to regenerative farming than the top picture with a big, huge monocrop in a big field. And the only thing is then perhaps in the example below, maybe you should consider more how can we recycle biomass, improve soil organic matter. But actually, when I investigate the soil quality of vegetable farms, due to its intensive farming and reusing crop residues, I found that the soil quality is already better than on farms where they only use stable crops for growing. So to finish off with a few concluding remarks or summary, one of them is regenerative agriculture. Yes, the principles are very solid, and I think we should try to include them as much as possible as we can in the current farming. But the claims sometimes are very extraordinary that for carbon sequestration, I'm not sure if it's the holy grail or the silver bullet that can solve the climate change. On the other hand, doing something is better than doing nothing. So Giller et al. Also wrote down in his article some guiding advice on agronomic engagement on regenerative agriculture. So first of all, is the problem to which regenerative agriculture, is it meant to be the solution? So what's the problem? And also, what do you want to regenerate? What's really the issue with the soil? And what need to be addressed? And what kind of agronomic mechanism will enable or facilitate this regeneration? So what can you really do? And can it be integrated? That is also economically and socially viable, because as a bystander standing outside the farm, we can tell the farmer, you should do this because it's better for the environment and society. But yeah, in the end, the farmer wants to earn money. But also, sometimes it's not sufficient to convince the farmer, because there are maybe also political, social, or economic forces that will not promote, but the opposite of new agronomic practices. So also that needs to be solved, and maybe stakeholder meetings are then needed. So finally, we can call it regenerative agriculture or farming or something else, but whatever it's called, I think we need to take up the challenge to avoid breakdown of climate and food systems. So even if we call it sustainable, resilient agriculture or whatever, I don't mind. I don't care. The thing is, we need to do something. And what I also feel is that if you look at the current system and try to optimize just one detail within the current existing system, it will not be sufficient. And I think a total new approach is needed. Like how can we integrate? How can we make use of others? The thing is also, don't expect immediate results. It takes time. So don't get disappointed if you start with something, then in the next season, you don't see any results. And also, there is no one solution that will fit all. So each farm, each field needs its own approach. So if you are more interested in more background and concepts and how to look at it, then also for this presentation, we use a lot of information from the top article written by Ken Giller. But also the second article is interesting to read, I think, which was also published just recently.